Watch what happens to your voice the moment it actually matters. Somewhere between the mirror and the real room, a stranger takes your place. That stranger is not the nervous one. That stranger is who you actually are. And the calm man in the mirror was only ever a rumor. In the shower, in the car, alone in front of the mirror, you are undefeated. The argument is won before it starts. The answer lands exactly on time. Calm. Precise. Exactly the man you intend to be. Then the real face sits down across from you, and that entire rehearsed man disappears in the first 4 seconds. Notice exactly what disappears, because it is never what you assume. Not your knowledge. You still know the answer, not your skill. Your hands still remember exactly how. What disappears is the version of you that only ever exists when nobody real is watching. And that version, the fluent one, was never actually yours to keep. Count the moments this month alone. The presentation where your voice climbed an octave and refused to come down. The negotiation where you agreed to less than you wanted because silence felt like drowning. The gym set you cut short the exact second someone glanced over, each one small, each one the same collapse, wearing a different outfit. You call it nerves, as if nerves were weather that simply arrives from nowhere and cannot be reasoned with, argued against, or trained. It is not weather, it is a verdict, delivered quietly by your own nervous system about which version of you it actually trusts enough to let be seen. Watch the specific mechanics of your own collapse, because you have run this program hundreds of times and never once studied it. The pace speeds up first, then the throat tightens, cutting the air, supporting your voice. Then the mind, starved of its rehearsed script, starts improvising apologies nobody asked for, filling silence that was never actually a problem until you decided it was. Here is the part you have never admitted out loud. You do not actually crumble under pressure. You crumble under being watched while under pressure. Remove the audience, keep the stakes, and half the collapse disappears, which means the failure was never about difficulty. It was about exposure. Think of the version of you that exists only in your head, rehearsing at 2 a.m, delivering the perfect line to the person who hurt you, closing the deal flawlessly in an empty room. That man is fluent. That man is fearless. That man has also never once shown up when it counted, and you have stopped noticing how strange that is. You have built an entire identity out of a man who only exists in low-stakes conditions, and you have quietly agreed to call the high-stakes collapse the exception, when the truth is simpler and colder. The rehearsal room was the exception all along. Somewhere right now, a version of you is about to be asked a hard question in a real room, in front of people whose opinion you have decided matters. And some part of you already knows before it happens which man is going to answer. The fluent one from the mirror, or the stranger who takes over the instant the stakes become real. This is not a confidence problem, no matter how many times you have called it that. Confidence is what a man has when the audience is small. What you are missing has a colder name, and tonight we are going to use it instead of the comfortable one. Your mind is running a single, ancient calculation every time the stakes rise, and it has nothing to do with your actual competence. It is asking one question only: is this exposure survivable? And because it evolved for a world of physical threat, not job interviews, it answers that question with a body built for running, not for speaking calmly into a microphone. So the racing heart, the tight throat, the sudden emptiness where your prepared words used to live, none of that is weakness. It is a threat response, correctly executed, aimed entirely at the wrong target. Your body is defending you from a lion that does not exist, using resources that were supposed to be available for the sentence you actually needed to say, and it borrows them without asking. Here is the part that should actually alarm you. This response does not check whether the room contains real danger. It checks only one variable: how much of your identity you have staked on the outcome. Raise the stakes in your own head, even for something that cannot physically hurt you, and the same ancient alarm fires exactly the same way. Which means the trigger was never the room, the audience, or the person across the table. The trigger was a private, silent decision you made beforehand, that this moment defines you, and you made that decision so quickly, so automatically, that you have never once caught yourself in the act of making it. The rehearsal room and the real room are not actually different in difficulty. The words are the same. The skill required is the same. The only variable that changed is meaning. You assigned catastrophic weight to one and none to the other, and your nervous system, which cannot tell the difference between a mirror and a hiring manager, simply obeyed the weight you handed it. This is why the man who trains alone for 100 hours and never once trains under exposure walks into the real room with a skill that has never met its actual working conditions. He did not fail to prepare. He prepared for a different sport, one played without an audience. And then he was surprised when the audience changed everything. And here's the trick your mind has always played, the one you have never named. It lets you believe the calm version rehearsing at midnight is the true you, and the version that shakes in the real room is some lesser imposter who occasionally shows up to ruin things. It is the opposite. The one who shows up under real pressure is the only version anyone has ever actually met. Say the true sentence, even though it costs something to say it. I have a working version of myself and an exposed version of myself, and I have only ever trained the one nobody else will ever see. That single admission explains every collapse you have ever blamed on nerves, luck, or a bad day. This is not a discipline problem, and it is not a talent problem either. It is a training environment problem. You have spent your entire life preparing in a controlled climate and then acting shocked when the storm outside behaves nothing like the room you practiced in, and calling the storm unfair instead of asking why you never once trained in weather. So the excuse machine stands exposed in the one currency it never expected to be measured by: exposure itself. Every collapse under pressure was never really about talent or nerves or bad luck. It was the predictable result of skill that had never once been tested under the only condition that actually matters: being seen. Centuries ago, an old swordsman was told at dawn that he would die by another man's blade before the sun reached its height. He had hours left. His students expected to find him sharpening steel or praying, or writing a final letter to be read after his death. Instead, they found him kneeling in the tea room exactly as he did every ordinary morning. He measured the tea the way he always measured it. He poured the water at the same temperature, the same angle, the same unhurried pace he used on mornings, when nothing at all was at stake. His hand did not shake. Not because he had mastered fear, his students would later say, but because he had never once trained a hand that knew the difference between an ordinary morning and his last one. A young student barely able to breathe himself, finally asked how he could remain so unmoved with death standing at the door. The old man did not look up from the bowl in his hands. I decided many years ago that no single morning would be allowed to weigh more than any other. This morning simply arrived on schedule, wearing a heavier coat than usual. The tea does not know the difference, and neither anymore do I. This is the gap between you and him, not courage. Courage still requires noticing the danger and overriding it. He had gone further than courage. He had removed the category itself, the invisible line his mind used to separate the moments that count from the moments that don't, so that no moment ever arrived preloaded with more weight than his hand could carry. He walked to the dueling ground the same way he had walked to the well that morning. Same length of stride, same breath, same posture. Witnesses who had seen him fight before said his blade moved no faster and no slower than it always did. There was no surge of adrenaline to manage, because there had never been a private version of him who only performed when unwatched. He won that duel in 4 movements, and his students agreed afterward, comparing memory to memory, that those 4 movements looked exactly like the ones he had practiced alone every dawn for 30 unremarkable years, in an empty courtyard where no one was ever watching and no outcome was ever genuinely at stake at all. This is the entire secret, and it is colder than any speech about bravery. He did not summon calm on the morning it mattered. Calm was not a resource he reached for under pressure, the way you reach for a breathing technique in the parking lot before an interview. Calm was simply the only setting his mind had ever been built to run on, in an empty room or a crowded one, on an ordinary Tuesday or the last morning of his life. The witnesses who mattered were never the ones watching the duel. The only witness whose opinion he had ever trained for was the version of himself, alone, every single morning, pouring water at the exact same pace, regardless of what the day was about to demand of him. That is the account real calm draws from, nowhere else. He never once called what he had confidence. Confidence, he told his students, is a weather system, arriving and leaving depending on the size of the crowd. What he had built instead had no weather in it at all. It was closer to a floor, flat, level, and identical. Whether one man stood on it or 1,000, whether the stakes were a cup of tea or his own life. You do not need 30 years in an empty courtyard to start building that same floor. You need to stop treating the version of you that only shows up alone as the real one, and start training the version that has to perform in front of a face that can say no. That work begins tonight, with 2 disciplines, not with a speech. Enough reverence for a dead man's tea ceremony. Now we build the floor under you. 2 disciplines, not 10 habits copied from a stranger online, not a personality transplant. 2 specific ways to close the gap between the man who performs alone and the man who has to perform in front of someone who can say no. Discipline. 1. Train at full exposure, on purpose, every week. Record the pitch and watch it back. Say the hard sentence out loud to an actual person before you ever need it for real. Lift the weight while someone is standing there. The goal is not to eliminate the discomfort of being watched. The goal is to make being watched so familiar that your nervous system stops treating it as a threat worth panicking over. This will feel worse before it feels better, and that discomfort is the entire point, not a warning sign to retreat from. every rep performed under a real gaze is a small deposit into the only account that has ever actually funded calm under pressure. The account labeled, "My body has been here before and survived." Nothing else makes that deposit. Discipline 2. Build one entry ritual identical every single time, regardless of what is at stake. A single breath held the same count. A single physical cue, feet planted, shoulders dropped, performed before every rehearsal and every real moment without exception. The ritual's entire job is to tell your nervous system that this moment is the same category as every other moment you have already survived. Use the exact same ritual whether you are rehearsing alone in an empty room or standing in front of the person whose answer could change your life. If the ritual changes depending on the size of the audience, you have just rebuilt the same gap you were trying to close. The ritual must not know the difference. Eventually, neither will you. These two disciplines are not complicated, and they were never meant to be. A floor does not need to be complicated to hold weight. It only needs to be flat and identical everywhere you stand on it. This will not applaud you for feeling brave. It will only ever ask one question. Did you perform the same, watched or unwatched, today? Do this weekly, without exception, and the gap between your rehearsal self and your real self will not close overnight. It will close the way every real floor gets built. One flat, unremarkable board at a time, laid down whether or not anyone is standing there to watch you lay it. Let the floor you are building settle under you just for a moment without needing anyone to confirm it is there. Real HEIJO-SHIN is not the absence of a racing heart. It is simply no longer asking the size of the room how you're allowed to feel before you decide how you're going to act. No crowd is coming to certify that you are calm enough to begin. No audience owes you a smaller room to practice in first. The floor gets built alone, board by board, in the one place that was always going to matter. Not the moment you are finally watched, but every ordinary moment before it that nobody saw. The tea will be poured again tomorrow in some ordinary room with nothing at all at stake. Pour it exactly the way you would pour it on the last morning of your life. That is the entire discipline. There was never going to be a second version of you waiting in reserve for the moment that counted.